Yo, what's up, everyone? Today we're learning Daf Ches of Masechta Shabbis. So, I'm actually re-recording this daf because this was after. This was actually the daf on which I discovered my mistake that I had kept on saying that Rosh HaYachid is Dalet Amos by Dalet Amos, but really it's Dalet Tfachim by Dalet Tfachim. Same for a Carmelist. So I'm re-recording this one. Also, there were other issues with that, with the recording of Daf Ches. So I'm re-recording it. It's actually a really interesting daf. It's pretty complicated, but it's also interesting. We get into Gemara geometry. We could see what geometry was like 1500 years ago. What did they know? What didn't they know? How accurate were they? How inaccurate were they? Pythagorean's theorem, equating the area of a circle versus the area of a square. So this is really interesting stuff that we're going to get to momentarily. Then we also get into complicated stuff that have to do with Eruvei Tchumen, making an Eruv on Shabbos to be able to extend how far you can walk between cities, things like that. So there is complexity here, as I'm sure everyone has already gotten used to in the last few dapim. But being a little bit ahead, I can assure you that on Daf Tes Amud Beis things lighten up a little bit. Let's go. So we're on Daf Zayin Amud Beis, about 6 lines from the bottom, where it says Gufa Amar of Chizda. So we had said earlier, okay, where was this? Okay, yeah, it was at the bottom of Zayin Amud Aleph. We said, no, it's Kana B'Rishus HaYachid V'Zarak V'Nach Al Gabe Al Gabav. Okay, if somebody took a pole and he just kind of stuck it into Rishus HaYachid, V'Zarak V'Nach Al Gabav, and then somebody threw something from Rishus HaRabim, okay, and it landed on top of this pole in Rishus HaYachid, Afilu Gavoa Mea Ama Chayv Mipnei Rishus HaYachid Ola Ad L'Rakia. So even if this pole is 100 amos tall, okay, you're still going to be chayiv because the Rishus HaYachid goes up indefinitely. It goes up forever. Okay? So, there's actually two interesting things about that. So one is that even if it's 100 amos tall, you're still going to be chayiv because the Rishus HaYachid goes up indefinitely. But the second interesting thing about that is that a pole is not daled al daled. Okay? And we're saying that if the thing lands on this pole, which is not daled al daled, daled tfachim al daled tfachim, you're still going to be chayiv. Now that's interesting because, chayiv for throwing from Rishus HaRabim into Rishus HaYachid. And it's interesting because we had that whole discussion earlier, a few pages ago, about, do you need the Makom Hanacha to be, do you need Akira and Anacha from the Makom Dalad Adal? And here we seem to be saying no. So the Gemara wants to say, okay, that Lemer Rav Chisda the Amar Karebi. So let's say that Rav Chisda says like Rebbe. Why? If you remember, the Tanya, as we learn in the Brayso, Zarek v'nach al gabe ziz kolshu, Rebbe M'chayev v'chacham potrim. If a person is standing in Rishus HaRabim and he throws epis, and it lands in Rishus HaRabim on this ziz kolshu, on this little bit, on this little something, but it's definitely not dalad dalad. So Rebbe says you're going to be chayev. And I'm sorry, did I just say that you threw it in Rishus HaRabim and it landed in Rishus HaRabim? The assumption right now in the Gemara is that you're standing in Rishus HaRabim and you're throwing it into Rishus HaYachid, okay? And it's landing on this little ziz, on this little something that isn't even dalad al dalad, and we're saying that you're going to be chayev, okay? Which means, and Rebbe says that you're going to be chayev, which means that according to Rebbe, you don't need the thing to land in Rishus HaRabim on a place of dalad al dalad, which seems to be just like Rav Chisda, who seems to be saying that if you're throwing something from Rishus HaRabim and it goes into Rishus HaYachid and it lands on this pole, you're going to be chayiv. So it seems that both Rebbe and Rav Chisda are assuming that the Makom Hanacha doesn't need to be dalad al dalad, whereas the Chachamim say that you'd be patur for doing this because they would say that it would have to land in Rishus HaYachid on a Makom dalad al dalad. Wow, you can really hear the wind howling outside over there. Okay, fine. Great. Amar Abaye, no. Abaye says not so great. When it comes to Rishus HaYachid, everyone agrees that it's like Rav Chisda, which is that you don't need it to land on a Makom Daled Al Daled in Rishus HaRabim. Okay, so if I throw something from in Rishus HaYachid, okay, Rishus HaRabim, Rishus HaYachid, so confusing. If I'm standing in Rishus HaRabim and I throw something into Rishus HaYachid, okay, and it lands on a place that is not Makom Daled Al Daled, I'm going to be chayiv. Everyone agrees on that, okay, and therefore everyone agrees with Rav Chisda that if I throw something from Rishus HaRabim and it lands on a pole in Rishus HaYachid, I'm going to be chayiv. So what's the machlokas between Rebbe and the Chachamim? So Elohacha be'ilana omed b'Rishus HaYachid v'nofo noter l'Rishus HaRabim. The machlokas between Rebbe and the Chachamim are when you have a tree, and that tree is in Rishus HaYachid, and it's Daled Al Daled. It's 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim. Now it has a branch that extends into Rishus HaRabim, and the extension into Rishus HaRabim is just a little itty bit. And you're standing in Rishus HaRabim, and you throw something Daled Amos in Rishus HaRabim, and it lands on this little itty bit. So now, in general, we would say that it would have to land on a Makom Daled Al Daled in Rishus HaRabim for it to be considered a Chashuva Hanacha. Over here, it landed on something that was smaller than Daled Al Daled. But it's connected to something that is larger than Daled Al Daled. So the question is, how do we approach this? Right? So we said, and it landed on this little bit that's extending into Rishus HaRabim. The Rebbe Savar Amrinan Shdinofo Basar Ikaru, Rabbanan Savri Lo Amrinan Shdinofo Basar Ikaru. So Rebbe says that what we do is we take this little bit that's sticking out and we give it chashivos, we give it significance due to the fact that it's connected to a tree, and that tree is Daled Al Daled. So that makes this little bit that's sticking out chashiv enough that we'll consider it a hanacha, and you'll be chayiv for throwing Daled Amos in Rishus HaRabim. Whereas the Chachamim say, I don't care that it's connected to a tree that's Daled Al Daled. This little bit where the thing landed is not Daled Al Daled, and therefore it's not chashuv, and therefore you're going to be pater. Okay, but everyone seems to agree, like Rav Chisda, that if you throw something from Rishus HaRabim into Rishus HaYachid, it wouldn't have to land on a makom Daled Al Daled. Okay, now we get into some Gemara geometry. Okay, here we go. Get ready. It's interesting because you kind of like see where the Gemara was holding in terms of geometry, but it is a little bit complicated. Remember back to 7th grade, Pythagorean's theorem, squares, right triangles, hypotenuses, diameters, all that stuff. It's all coming up. Diagonals. Here we go. Amar Abaye. Abaye said, Zarak kaveris l'Rishus HaRabim, Gavoa Yud ve'ena Rechava Vav, Chayev. Rechava Vav, Pater. Okay. Abaye says, if you take like a basket or like a little barrel kind of thing, and this barrel is round, okay, and it's made out of reeds, okay, so that means you kind of wove it out of reeds. So, if you can imagine like vertical standing reeds and like horizontal reeds kind of woven in between, and that's how they made this basket. Okay, fine. Now, this basket is 10 tefachim tall, okay, and its diameter is 6 tefachim. Okay, well, I think we start off by saying that it isn't 6 tefachim. So we say if it isn't 6 tefachim, so then you're going to be pater. If it is 6 tefachim, then you're going to be chayiv. So let's just pretend for a second that this barrel wasn't round. Let's just say you took a container that was square, okay? So let's just say you took some kind of thing that was square, and it was 10 tefachim tall, and it was 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim in terms of its length and width, okay? If you take that thing, so i.e. it's a Rishus HaYachid. It's like a kli, that's a Rishus HaYachid. It's like a movable Rishus HaYachid, right? 10 tefachim tall, 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim wide. If you would take this object and you would stand, and it says, right, you threw it li Rishus HaRabim, okay? So you're standing on Rishus HaYachid, and you would chuck this Rishus HaYachid into Rishus HaRabim, you would be pater, because you're only chayav for throwing a kli from one Rishus to the other, and we learned that out, as Rashi says, we learned it out from the needles that they would pass, I guess, to each other when they were building the Mishkan. So those are kalim. Not if you throw a Rishus. So if you would pick up this object that is 10 tfachim tall and 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide, and you throw that from Rishus HaYachid into Rishus HaRabim, you would be pater. Okay? And if it wasn't 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim wide, you would be chayiv, because then you're just throwing an object from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. Fine. Now, the thing is that over here, this thing that you're throwing isn't square, it's round. So if I understand correctly, we're basically trying to figure out what the area of a circle, would be, basically how to create a circle with the same area as a square, right? If the area of the square would be 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim, right, the sides of the square would be 4 by 4, what would have to be the diameter of a circle in order for the circle to have the same area as the square? Now, this is a question, in the time, so Rashi, the Gemara was like 1500 years ago. Rashi was like, I don't know, like the 900s or something like that. Still in the time of Leonardo da Vinci, he still spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to square a circle, right? How to basically, if I understand correctly, I read the Walter Isaacson biography of Leonardo da Vinci. He spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to square a circle, how to basically create a square with the same area as a circle. So it sounds like already and he was in the 1400s or whatever, it sounds like it was still an unsolved problem, at least the way I understand it. So here's the Gemara's approach. We're going to see that with our current knowledge of how to calculate the area of a circle, this would be incorrect, but it's interesting. So what Abaye is saying is that in order for the circle to have the same area as the square, assuming that they're trying to get area, which I assume they are, but maybe not, I don't know. They're saying that that circle would have to have the diameter of that circle, okay, would have to be the same as the diagonal of the square. Which is interesting because it shows you their knowledge of Pythagorean's theorem. Basically, the way that they assume is that if you have a square that is 1 tefach by 1 tefach, okay, then the diagonal of that square is going to be 1 tefach and 2/5 of a tefach, i.e. 1.4 tefachim. And if you do Pythagorean's theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, it comes out that the diameter is, the diagonal will be 1.41, and 1 and 2/5 tefachim is 1.4. So it's off by just slightly. And then if you're talking about a square that is 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, i.e. 4 by 4, so then using the Gemara's kind of way of doing 1 tefach by 1 tefach is 1.4 tefachim, so then 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim would be 5.6 tefachim. And using the diagonal would be 5.6 tefachim. Using Pythagorean's theorem, it would be 5.65. So it's really fairly accurate. And then what we're saying is that therefore, because a square whose two sides are 4 would have a diagonal of 5.65 or 5.6, so we're saying that if, now translating this into a circle, if we assume that to get a circle with the same area of the square, the circle would have to have a diameter who's the same as the diagonal of the square, well then we need, so if the circle, if this round barrel that you're throwing is 5 tfachim, i.e. it's less than 5.6 tfachim, if the diameter of it is 5 tfachim, so we're saying that that's going to be too small. It's not going to be a Rishus HaYachid, and it'll be like you're just throwing an object, and therefore you're going to be chayiv for throwing from Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim. However, if the object is 6 tfachim in diameter, well then it is above, it is more than 5.6 tfachim, which is the diagonal of that square, and we're going to say that you're going to be pater because you then threw a Rishus HaYachid from Rishus HaYachid into Rishus HaRabim, and therefore you'd be pater. Cool. And Rashi says, why would Abaye say that if it's less than 6, you would be chayav, even though really, if it's anything more than 5.6, you would be pater, because it's already that would be the diagonal. Rashi, because he just wanted to give full numbers, but yeah, anything above 5.6, you'd only be chayav midrabanan anyways. You wouldn't be chayav midaraisa. Now, using current mathematical theory in terms of finding out the area of a circle, I believe, which is basically area is equal to pi times radius squared. So then I believe that it would come out to the diameter would have to be about 4.5, which means anything above. So 5 would already be considered large enough, I think. But the Gemara is assuming that 5 is too small because they're doing it based on the diagonal of the triangle. But yeah, super duper interesting. So Amar Abaye zar kaveres l'rishus harabim gavoa yud ve'ena rechav avav. So if you throw this barrel from Rishus HaYachid into Rishus HaRabim, and it's 10 tfachim tall, but it's not 6 tfachim wide, the diameter is less than 6 tfachim, so then you would be chayav, because you threw basically an object. Rechav avav patur. But if the diameter is 6, so then you would be patur, because you threw a rishus, that's already considered rishus yachid. Rava amar afilu eina rechav vav patur. Rava says, forget about finding areas of squares and circles. It really doesn't matter. Even if it's not 6 tfachim in diameter, you would still be patur, because my taima efshar lekromios shel kanish lo yailu lemala me'asara. Because if it's 10 tfachim tall, certainly there are going to be some of the reeds, the vertical reeds that are making up this barrel, that are going to be above 10 tfachim. It's not going to be exact. It's not going to be perfect. And therefore, that part of it, therefore, is going to be in a makom p'tur. And therefore, since part of it's in a makom p'tur, you're going to be patur for the whole thing. Kafa al piha. What if you flip over this barrel? So now the opened bottom is on the bottom, and the bottom is on top. Okay, so meaning the open part is face down, and the closed part is on top. So, and then you throw it like that, face down. So shiva v'mashu chayiv, shiva v'mechza pater. So if you flip it around, flip it on its head, and then you throw it. So if it's a shiva v'mashu, so let's just call it 7.1 tfachim. So you're going to be chayav for throwing it, because remember lavud. Lavud means that when it comes to walls, mechitzos, we can apply this halacha Moshe Sinai, which says that if it's within 3 tfachim, it can be considered connected. And therefore, if this barrel is like 7.1 tfachim tall, so if you now throw it, once it gets within 3 tfachim of the ground, so let's call that 2.9 tfachim, so then it's already going to be considered lavud, like it's connected to the ground. But now 7.1 plus 2.9 is 10, so it's all going to be within Rishus Harabim, and you're going to be chayav. However, we're saying if it's 7.5, and Rashi points out even if it's 7 and 2 mashahus, so keilu, let's call that 7.2, so then you would be pater, because once it gets within 3 tfachim of the ground, so let's call that 2.9, so it's considered connected to the ground, and 7.2 plus 2.9 is going to be 10.1, which means that part of this barrel is going to be in the makom p'tur, and therefore you're going to be pater. Rav Ashi Amar afilu shiva v'mechza chayiv, my time mechitzos l'sochan asuyos. Rav Ashi isn't going to hear of this, and he's going to say, no, even if it's 7.5 tfachim, i.e., and part of it's going to be in a makom p'tur, it doesn't matter, because you're not really supposed to be flipping over barrels. Barrels are supposed to be right side up, so don't flip it over and then start making, cheshbainis about lavud. Rather, if you throw this barrel, you're going to be chayiv, and that is that. Amar Ula, said Ula, Amud tisha b'rishus harabim, v'rabim chatfen olav, v'zarak v'nachal gabav, chayiv. So, if you have a pillar in rishus harabim, okay, and lots of people use this pillar, because they like, if they're carrying something, they'll just drop it on the pillar for a second to like fix it, reposition it and move on. Okay. V'zorak v'nachal gabav. And you're in Rishus, let's just say you're in Rishus Harabim, and you throw something Daled Amos, and it lands on this thing. So, now on the one hand you might say, well, it's only 9 Tfachim tall. And therefore, if it's less than Daled al Daled, so now I would think it's a Makom P'tur. And I'll be potter for throwing a Daled Amos. However, we are saying that even if it would be less than Daled al Daled, you'd still be chayiv, because since people use it to put their stuff on it, so it becomes a tzorech harabim, and because, right, it says, right, the tzorech l'rabim, that many people need it, and because many people need it, it becomes part of Rishus Harabim, and it's keilu you threw something Daled Amos and it landed in Rishus Harabim. Although if it's not Daled al Daled, so then, interesting, even if it's not a makom, if it's not Daled al Daled, then it shouldn't be considered a makom chashuv. That's interesting. If it's not a makom chashuv, so mistama you would be Pater because it's not a makom chashuv, no? So but you can even say, okay, fine, so let's say that it is a makom Daled al Daled. You would still, right, so even if it is a makom Daled al Daled, so it landed on a makom chashuv, okay, and you threw it arba amos, and we're saying that it's not a karmelis, however, and right, because even though a karmelis is also midirabanan, you would still be it would be pater avalaser, and therefore fine. So let's say that it is Daled amos. So let's say that it is Daled tfachim by Daled tfachim, but it's only 9 tfachim tall, so it's not a rishus hayachid. So you would think that you would be pater because it's landing in a karmelis. No, you're actually chayav because people use it, and therefore it's considered part of Rishus Harabim, and therefore you're going to be chayav for throwing something Daled Amos in Rishus Harabim. Fine. My timer. Well, because pachos mishlosha midras darse le'rabim. Well, if it's less than 3 tfachim from the ground, well then people will step on it, and it's just going to be considered part of Rishus Harabim. Okay. Mishlosha v'ad tisha, from 3 tfachim until 9 tfachim, so lo midras darse le v'lo katufe mechatfe. So from 3 tfachim until 9 tfachim, well, people aren't going to step on it anymore, and people also aren't going to use it to fix their burdens because it's uncomfortable, it's too low. So therefore, it would just be considered like a karmelis, and you would be pater avalaser to throw onto it. But tisha v'adev mechatfe nilave. But once it's 9 tfachim, even though it's still a karmelis, people are certainly using it, and therefore becomes a tzorech rabim, and therefore you're going to be chayiv for throwing Daled Amos onto this thing. Amar le Abai le Rav Yosef, guma mai. So Abai says to Rav Yosef, what about a guma? What about a hole in the ground that is 9 tfachim deep? Do we, right, and then some people might leave things in this hole and go like run some errands and come back and pick it up, later. So, it's considered shimush ayidei adchak, right? It's not like, everyone wants to use it, but like if I need to stash something somewhere, so I'll use it. So the question is that considered enough to be considered a tzorech rabim, to say that these holes that are 9 tfachim deep would be considered part of Rishus Harabim? So Amar le v'chein beguma. So Rav Yosef said that the same thing applies to aguma. These holes in the ground in Rishus Harabim that are 9 tefachim deep would be considered Rishus Harabim. Rava Amar beguma lo. Rava said no. A hole in Rishus Harabim would not be considered Rishus Harabim. My time tashmish aidei adchak lo shmei tashmish. Because if you have to use something aidei adchak, meaning as opposed to the pillar in Rishus Harabim, which is like, it's just very convenient to use, right? So therefore it's considered part of Rishus Harabim. It's not ideal to have to stash your stuff in a hole and run another errand and come back for them. You do it because you need to. Maybe it's too hard for you to carry whatever you're doing. So, you do it because you need to, but that's called tashmish aidei adchak, and that's not considered tashmish, and therefore it's not considered real usage, and it's not considered part of Rishus Harabim. Eisvei Rav Ada bar Masna l'Rava. Haisa kupaso munachas b'Rishus Harabim. So Rav Ada Bar Masna asked Akash and Rava, and he says we have a brisa that says that a person had a basket that was lying in Rishus Harabim, Gavoa Asar Ruchava Dalid, and it was 10 tefachim tall and it was 4 tefachim wide. Okay? Ein metalton lo mitocha Rishus Harabim lo Rishus Harabim letocha. So you can't carry from Rishus Harabim and put something in it, and you can't take from it and bring it to Rishus Harabim, because that would be Hotzar Rishus Rishus, because since it's 10 tefachim tall and 4 tefachim wide, so it's Rishus HaYachid. Pachos mikein, however, if it is less than 4 by 4 or less than 10 tefachim tall, mitaltalin, then you would be able to use it back and forth, right? Because if it's less than 4 by 4, it would be a makom ptur, and even if it's 4 by 4, but it's less than 10 tefachim, even though it would be a carmelis, Rashi points out lo gazer abanan levatulem mitoras kelim ho klihu, right? Since at the end of the day, this isn't really a fit, it's a metaltalin, it's a kli, right? So therefore, they're not going to say make it a carmelis and say that you're not allowed to carry. They're not going to say they're din derabanan of a carmelis and say that you can't carry to and from this kli. And therefore, if it's less than 10 tefachim or less than dalid by dalid, you will be able to kind of carry in and out of it, no problem. And then we say v'chein beguma, and the same thing applies to a hole. So it sounds like my lava seifa. It sounds like it's talking about the seifa that you can carry in and out of this hole, just like you can carry in and out. I mean, if you have a basket that's less than 10 tefachim or less than dalid or dalid, you would be able to carry in and out of it. So when we say v'chein beguma, it's talking about that also if you have a hole that's less than 10 tefachim, you would be able to carry in and out of it. So we see that would be considered part of Rishus Harabim. Unlike Rava, who says that it wouldn't be considered part of Rishus Harabim. So he says, lo, a reisha. No, it's talking about the reisha, that if it is 10 tefachim, then it would be also to take things in and out of it, because it would be a Rishus HaYachid, and that same thing would apply to a hole. Okay, fine. But Rava still maintains that if it's less than 10 tefachim, it would not be considered part of Rishus Harabim. It would be considered a carmelis or makom ptur based on the dimensions. Eisvei, we have a kasha. Niskaven lishbos b'Rishus Harabim. Oh, Eruvin. Eruvei Tchumen. What does this mean? It means that on Shabbos you're not allowed to walk more than 2,000 amas out of your city. That is what's called Tchum Shabbos. Now what if you want to visit your friend who's the next city over and it's 4,000 amas away? 4,000 amas is about, 2 miles or so? No, like 1 mile. I think it's like a mile or something. A little more. No, 4,000 amas, about 6,000 feet, let's say. So I don't know, a little more than a mile, whatever it is. So let's say you want to go to your friend's house and he's 4,000 amas away. So what you could do is, you could make an Erev Tchumen. And what an Erev Tchumen means that you, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, you go out 2,000 amas out of the city and you put down mazon shtei sudas, I think enough food for like 2 meals, and you put that down over there by the Tchum Shabbos, okay, by the 2,000 amas. And then what happens is when Shabbos comes in, because you have enough food there for 2 meals, it's considered like you're making Shabbos in that place. And if you're making Shabbos in that place, well then you could walk in either direction 2,000 amos from that place. Which means that you could, from your city where you're going to actually sleep tonight, it's within 2,000 amos of that place where you're technically speaking making Shabbos. So you can walk to that place from your city, and then you can also continue walking another 2,000 amos to get to the next city over. So now, if your kavanah was to make Shabbos in Rishus Harabim, so you figured you're going to put your mazon shtei sudas at this point in Rishus Harabim. You figure you're going to make it in Rishus Harabim. And that way, theoretically, if you want to, on Shabbos, when you're walking to your friend's house, if you get hungry, when you're passing by this food, you can eat it, right? However, the problem is, or what makes it complicated, is that he didn't actually just leave it out in Rishus Harabim. He saw that there was a little pit right there. So he put the food in the pit. Well, now the problem is that if that pit is a Rishus HaYachid, he's not going to be able to eat it on Shabbos. He doesn't have to eat it, but he has to be able to eat it, right? So if it's in a pit, well then he won't be able to take it out in order to eat it, because that's Rishus HaYachid, he's a Rishus Harabim, would be Otzam Rishus Rishus. So, L'maylam yutfachim eruv erev, l'matam yutfachim ein eruv erev. So we're going to explain what this means. But basically all we're saying right now, that if it's above 10 tefachim, then it's a good Eruv. If it's below 10 Tfachim, then it's not a good Eruv. Hechidami, what does this mean? Above 10 Tfachim, below 10 Tfachim. Ilema b'bord is be'asara. So if we're talking about a pit that is 10 Tfachim deep, at least 10 Tfachim deep. Ulamaila de daloi ve'osvei, ulamata de satoi ve'osvei. And if we're saying that above means that it is higher than 10 Tfachim from the bottom of the pit, and below means that it's within 10 Tfachim of the bottom of the pit, well then, Mali lemaila umali lemata hu b'makom echad ve'eruva b'makom acheru. Who cares if it's within 10 Tfachim of the bottom of the pit or above 10 Tfachim from the bottom of the pit? This pit is Rishus HaYachid. And as we learned earlier today, right, Rishus HaRabim Ole, right, goes up for indefinitely. So the entire thing is a Rishus HaYachid. I don't know if I said Rishus HaRabim just now, I meant Rishus HaYachid. Rishus HaYachid goes up indefinitely. And therefore this entire pit is a Rishus HaYachid. And therefore who cares if it's within 10 Tfachim of the bottom of the pit? It's in a Rishus HaYachid, and he's in Rishus HaRabim, he won't be able to eat it. El-Alav b'bor delays be'asara. Rather, it must be that no, it means that if it's above 10 Tfachim, i.e., if the pit is less than 10 Tfachim deep, so then it's considered not then he'll be able to eat it, right? And if it's more than 10 Tfachim deep, then he won't be able to eat it. V'katani eruvo eruv. Alma tashmish ayidei d'chak shmei tashmish. And we're saying that as long as it's lower than 10 Tfachim, it's a good eruv because he'll be able to take it out and eat it. Which means that if it's less than 10 Tfachim, it's considered part of Rishus HaRabim. Which means that Shimush Aidei D'chak is Shmei Shimush, right? That if you have this hole in the ground of Rishus HaRabim that you can use sometimes, it's considered use. And that's why it's considered part of Rishus HaRabim. And that's why this guy can, that's why it's a kosher Eruv if he puts it in a pit that's less than 9 Tfachim, less than 10 Tfachim, because he'll still be able to take out his Eruv and eat it if he wants to. So that's a kasha on Rava, who says that a pit like this is not considered part of Rishus HaRabim, because we don't say Shimush Aidei D'chak Shmei Shimush. So Zimnin Mishane Le Hu B'Rishus HaRabim Ve'eruvo B'Karmelis. No, I skipped. Zimnin Mishane Le Hu Ve'eruvo B'Karmelis. Sometimes he would answer this question by saying, no, they're both in a Carmelis. This Eruv, this hole was in it was in like an open field. And because it was in an open field, it's a Carmelis. And therefore, he could take, so this pit that's less than 10 Tfachim is a Carmelis, right? And he's in a Carmelis, so therefore he could take it out of the pit and eat it. Well, if it's a Carmelis, then why are we calling it Rishus HaRabim? Right, it says, Niskam Lishbos B'Rishus HaRabim, so why are we calling it Rishus HaRabim if it's a Carmelis? So the Fishe'enu Rishus HaYachid, because just like Ula answered the other day when we called a Carmelis a Rishus HaYachid, so we say because it's not a Rishus HaRabim, here also he says, no, we're calling it Rishus HaRabim because it's not a Rishus HaYachid. So if we call it Rishus HaRabim, but really it's a Carmelis. Fine. V'zimnim Mishani Le, and sometimes Rava would answer this question in the following way. Hu b'Rishus HaRabim ve'eruvo b'Carmelis. He says, no. Sure, the guy's in Rishus HaRabim, but his Eruv is in a Carmelis. Okay, but that's a problem. You can't just take something out of a Carmelis on Shabbos. V'Rebbe hi de'amar kol davar shehu mishum shvus lo gazu alav ben hashmashos. And the author of this brisa is Rebbe, who says that when any things that are also d'Rabbanan, they do not apply Ben Hashmashos, after Shkia, before Tzeis, in that Ben Hashmashos time. And therefore, at what point is it, when you make this Eruv, it's considered like you're there for Shabbos, even though you're really technically not, but it's considered like you're there because you left your Muslim Makom Shtei Sudas over there, in the middle of Rishus HaRabim. At what point do we consider that, okay, he's over there for Shabbos? It's when Shabbos starts. Immediately at Shkia, when Ben Hashmashos starts, right, it's Ke'ilu like, okay, his food is there, it's Shabbos. His food is there, it's Ke'ilu right now, at Ben Hashmashos, that he's making Shabbos over there. And at Ben Hashmashos, D'Rabbanans don't apply, which means the fact that it's in a Carmelis, at that time, at Ben Hashmashos is irrelevant. And at that time, he would be able to take the food out of the Carmelis and eat it in the Rishus HaRabim. Therefore, it's considered a good Eruv, even though on Shabbos, he won't be able to take it out of the Carmelis. But it's nonetheless a good Eruv, and he could continue walking to his friend. And then Rava continues and says, by the way, don't think I'm just, making such a big deal for no reason, and I'm just trying to, push you off by saying that Tashmish Ayidei Adchak Lav Shmei Tashmish. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. Tashmish Ayidei Adchak is not Shmei Tashmish, and therefore this hole is not considered part of Rosh Hashanah. Eladavka Kamin Alach, the Tanan, as we learn in the Mishnah. Okay, this is a little complicated. Im Haya Rikak Maim Rosh Hashanah Maleches Bo. What if you have a swamp, like a little swampy area, and there's a Rosh Hashanah that passes through it, right? I.e., Rosh Hashanah is a place where a public thoroughfare. So let's say you have a path that people walk on to go like between cities or something, and there's a swamp that goes in. You got to kind of pass through this swamp at some point. So azorik l'socha dalad amos chayiv. So if you throw dalad amos into that swamp, you're going to be chayiv, right? I assume what it means is if you're not in the swamp, or if you are in the swamp, either way. But like even if you just throw something, dalad amos, and it lands in the swamp, right? You're going to be chayiv. I think the assumption being that it's Rosh Hashanah. Okay? V'chamu rikak mayim pachos miyud tfachim. And how deep is this rikak hamayim? How deep is this swamp? It's less than 10 tfachim. Okay? Okay. It's less than 10 tfachim. And we're saying that if you throw something into there, you're going to be chayiv because it's considered Rosh Hashanah. Right? Whether you're in the swamp and you throw a dalad amos in the swamp, so you threw dalad amos in Rosh Hashanah, or whether you're not in the swamp and you throw it 4 amos and it lands in the swamp. Either way, you're going to be chayiv because it's considered Rosh Hashanah. So the question is, why is it considered Rosh Hashanah? And Rav is going to argue that it has nothing to do with Tashmish Ayidei Adchak Shmei Tashmish, because that wouldn't be a reason to say that it's Rosh Hashanah. Rather, it's for a different reason. Now, the crazy thing about this Mishnah is that it then says the same exact thing a second time. Literally, Mamash repeats the first line in the Mishnah. That the question is, why did it repeat that same thing twice? Why did it have to mention this swamp being in Rosh Hashanah twice? And why did it have to mention that you're walking through this swamp twice? So Bishlam Rikak Trei Zimne. I understand why it had to mention the fact that, you're going to go swimming in this swamp twice. Because because it had to teach me that I might use this swamp both during the summer and during the winter. Because if it would only tell me that sometimes people use this, that people can use this swamp in the summer, well, that's Davide Inche le Karuri Nafshayu. Well, that's only because it's convenient to use this, to cool down in the summer, so they might use it. But in the winter where it's cold, you don't need to cool yourself down. If anything, you'll probably be freezing if you go in there. So then we'll say that it's not considered use, right? It's not considered properly using the swamp. And if it would say that, that they can that people go into the swamp during the winter, so then agav dematnif makri v'nachis. I'll say it's just because people get dirty, so they need to go and clean up. I don't know why you're going into a swamp to clean up, but you're going into a swamp to clean up, so that's why people use it. But during the summer, people won't use it, and therefore, using it in the summer wouldn't be considered usage. So tzricha. So therefore, we needed to say rikak twice, to say that no matter how people are using it, right, to say that people are using it, whether they need to or whether they don't need to. Okay. Fine. Okay. So we're saying that, right, it says rikak twice to say that, people might use this both in the summer and the winter, whether it's common to use it at that time or whether it's not common to use that time. So basically, people are using it. There is tashmish ayidei adchak. The question is that considered enough of a tashmish to make this swamp into a Rishus Harabim? And the answer seems to be no. How come? Because Elahiluch Trezimne Lamali. Why do I need the Mishnah to tell me twice that people walk through this swamp? Right? Just tell me once that people walk through this swamp, Ayidei Adchak. Obviously it's Ayidei Adchak because, only because they need to, because who wants to walk through a swamp? But why would you have to tell me that twice? Nobody ever wants to walk through the swamp, not in the summer, not during the winter. Elalav Shma Mina. You know why it says walking through the swamp twice? To teach me a chiddush, which is Hiluch Ayidei Adchak Shmei Hiluch, Tashmish Ayidei Adchak Lo Shmei Hiluch Shma Mina. Because Rava says the reason why the Mishnah had to say twice that people are walking through the swamp is to teach me that it's the reason why this swamp is considered a Rishus Harabim is because people walk through it, Ayidei Adchak, when they have no other choice and they need to walk through it. That is why it's considered a Rishus Harabim. But just the fact that people use it, even Ayidei Adchak, maybe in the winter when it's cold or in the summer when they're not dirty, that wouldn't be enough to make it a Rishus Harabim. It's only because people walk through it, Ayidei Adchak, that makes it a Rishus Harabim. And therefore, Rava says, you see that Shimush Ayidei Adchak lo Shmei Shimush, and that's why a hole in Rishus Harabim is not considered Rishus Harabim. Amar Rav Yehuda, Hai Zerza Dikane, Rama V'Zakve lo Machai Bad Akrele. So, if you have these long bundles of reeds, okay, and you figure that instead of carrying them in Rishus Harabim, you'll just lift up one side, plop it over, and then lift up another side and plop it over. Keep on doing these somersault kind of things with this thing. So then he's not going to be chayav until he actually picks it up. Okay, might be pater avalasar, but he won't be chayav until he picks it up. Amar Mar. Adam Omid ala iskopa. Okay, so an iskopa is a threshold of a door, right? So we're almost imagining kilu like a mavoi, right? We talked about mavois the other day, right? You have Rishus Harabim, you have this alleyway that's going off of Rishus Harabim, and you can carry in this mavoi, assuming that there is a lechi in the mavoi, okay? Okay, if a lechi is basically this heker, this thing that they put up, either it's a upward pole, which is a lechi, or a beam that goes from one wall of the mavoi to the other. But if there's a lechi or a korah, which serves as like a heker, not that hey, past here is going to be Rishus Harabim, don't carry. So then you can carry in the mavoi, assuming that they made an erev or whatever. So now, what if you have a threshold to that mavoi? Okay, and so you have that threshold in that mavoi. So the Mishnah said that you can carry, if somebody's standing on that threshold, you can pass things back and forth between people in the mavoi, which is Rishus HaYachid, the Balabayas, right? Or you can even pass things back and forth between people in the Rishus Harabim, right? Just don't pass from the person Rishus HaYachid to the person Rishus Harabim and vice versa. So the question is, why are you allowed to pass back and forth with these people when you're on the threshold? So Amar Adam Omid Alei Iskopa, a person could stand on this threshold. No tell me balabayis v'nosin lo. You could take from the balabayis in the Rishus HaYachid in this mavui, and you can take and give. No tell me ani v'nosin lo. And you can give it also to the poor person who's standing in Rishus Harabim, back and forth. Hai iskopa mai. What is this iskopa? Ilema iskopa is Rishus Harabim. So if you're going to say it's an iskopus Rishus Harabim, which means that this threshold is at the edge of this mavoi, okay? And the thing is that the lechi of the mavoi is more inward than it, i.e., this is past the lechi. So if you're coming from your chatzer and you're going in the mavoi and you see the lechi and you're like, oh wow, I shouldn't go past this lechi, the iskopa, the threshold is just past that lechi, okay? Well, if that case, then it wouldn't be considered Rishus HaYachid, it would be considered part of Rishus Harabim. You wouldn't be allowed to carry in this threshold. So if that's the case, well then notum mi balabayis hamapik me Rishus HaYachid Rishus Harabim. Well then you're going to be taking someone from the balabayis who's in Rishus HaYachid in the mavoi, right? And you're going to be in Rishus Harabim. That's going to be a problem. Veli iskopus Rishus HaYachid. So let's say it's the iskopus Rishus HaYachid, right? Let's say maybe it's 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim and it's 10 tefachim tall, or maybe as Rashi says, it's under a roof, or maybe the lechi is on the other, maybe it's within the area of the lechi, so it's part of the mavoi. Well, then notel min ha'ani hakam ayla mirshus harabim l'rishus hayachid. Well, how can you take from the ani? The ani's in rishus harabim, you're in rishus hayachid. So how can you say they can pass back and forth that way? Eli iskopus karmelis. So let's say it's an iskopus, it's a karmelis, right? Maybe it's 4 tefachim by 4 tefachim, but it's less than 10 tefachim tall. But noto v'nosein lichatchila, sof isur miya isa. But it's asur midirabanan. You can't just lichatchila pass back and forth between these different parties. Eli iskopa mekom petur ba'almahu. Rather, it must be that this iskopa is a makom petur, right? It's between 3 tefachim and 10 tefachim tall, and it's less than daled al daled, so it's a makom petur, and that's why you could pass back and forth. Kigon delays be daled al daled, such that it's less than daled al daled. Great. V'chiyad Rav Dimi, right? And then it wouldn't even matter if it's 10 tefachim or not. If it's less than daled al daled, it's a makom petur. V'chiyad Rav Dimi Amar Rab Yochanan. And it's like that which when Rav Dimi came, he said the name of Yochanan, Makom she'ein bo daled al daled tfachim. This is where I finally realized my mistake, that I was understanding Rishus Hayachid wrong the entire time. That it needs to be 4 tfachim. So, right, Makom she'ein bo daled al daled tfachim, if it's not 4 tfachim by 4 tfachim, mutter livnei Rishus Hayachid v'livnei Rishus Harabim. It's permitted to both the Rishus Hayachid and the Rishus Harabim, the katef alav, to put their, load down on it, as long as you don't, go from Rishus Hayachid and then by way of the Makom Petur into Rishus Harabim, and vice versa. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Amar Mar, we said earlier, right? Don't take from the balabayis and give it to the ani, right? And you'll be the conduit being in the Makom Petur. Don't do it vice versa. And if you did do this, transfer, then you're going to be patur nonetheless. Let's say that this is a kasha on Rava, the Amar Rava, that if somebody carries something 4 amos in Rishus Harabim, however, what he did was, he carried it above his head, which was above 10 tefachim. So theoretically, he carried it 4 amos in Rishus Harabim, but it was going the entire time through a makom petur, right? Because it's above 10 tefachim. So you had a akira and anach in Rishus Harabim, but everything in between was pater. So, and he says that you're chayiv. So let's say this is a kasha, because basically here also you have akira in one Rishus, right? You have an akira in Rishus Hayachid, and a hanacha and Rishus Harabim, so an akira and hanacha that are not allowed, but in between it went through a makom petur, which is pater, and we're saying that it's okay. So he said, no, it's not a good proof. Hasam lo nach hachanach. Over there, when he was walking 4 amos in Rishus Harabim with the thing in the makom petur the whole time, he never put it down, and that's why he's going to be chayiv. Over here, he actually put it down in the makom petur, and that's why he is pater. And even Rava would agree with that. Alright, shkayach everybody, crazy day today, right? All that geometry and stuff like that, it was super interesting, but also somewhat complicated. Stuff about Erevin and all sorts of stuff, but also important stuff about, just in general, and also, Makom Petur, things like that. Okay, enjoy everybody. Tomorrow is going to be the last day of all this complicated Erevin kind of things, and then we're going to move on to some sort of lighter, kind of more brachosy kind of things. Peace out, y'all.